Well, good afternoon. This is Saturday afternoon, not much going on, and so I decided to shoot a video. Now, there's no cooking in this video. It's strictly going to be a story about my days in school. This is a school I went to for 12 years, first grade through 12th. And graduated there, and I managed to come out as the salutatorian in my class of 2 boys and 5 girls. The reason there were so few boys, it was during the war, and most of the boys, as soon as they got old enough, they dropped out of school and joined the Navy or something, with thought that they'd come back to high school after they got out of the military, but few of them ever did. But at any rate, sports there was the big thing, and football was almost a religion. High school football in Texas, it happens every Friday night, and stores close, restaurants close, service stations close, the whole town, and especially in a small town like where I lived, the whole town shuts down for the football game. And if it's an away game, everybody gets in their cars and drives to wherever the team is playing that weekend. And as you can imagine, during the war, it was hard to fill a football team. Our school there, we only had 3 men in the whole school: the superintendent, principal, and a guy that they called coach. He was kind of a foul-mouthed sort of guy, wasn't very likable, but he coached all the various sports, and football seemed to be his favorite to coach. And school had only been on a week or 2, and I was leaving after it got over in the afternoon. I was a sophomore then. Had just come into that class, and as I was going to the door, he was standing there, and he says, football meeting in the gym. And I said, well, I'm not going out for football. I don't play football, never did, don't care for it. He says, that doesn't make any difference. You're going to be on the team. We need you. And so I went in there and sat through the meeting, and him doing a lot of swearing and everything like that. And when I got out, I asked my dad, I said, do I have to play football? And he says, nope, that's an extracurricular activity, and you don't have to play unless you want to. So I said, okay, I don't want to. I have a lot of other things that interest me more than that. Flying was one of them. Ham radio is another one. I was a voracious reader. I read everything nearly in the library there. A tall, skinny kid, and not very athletic at the time. But at any rate, the next afternoon I started out the door, and he stopped me there, and he says, you go to football practice today. And I said, well, I asked my dad, and he said I didn't have to play football. And he said, well, I'm the coach, and I tell you, you do have to play football. And as soon as he turned his attention elsewhere, I left. And then the next afternoon, he was standing there as I walked out to the door, and he stopped me, and he said, you weren't at practice yesterday. And I said, no, I'm not going to play football. So he took me into the superintendent's office, and they talked to me about school spirit and how they needed me and all of that stuff. And I still said I don't want to play football. My dad said I didn't have to. Well, they grabbed me and pulled my shirt up. The superintendent was holding my arm and my wrists and pulled my shirt up. They had me face down on the library table there in his office. And the principal was a hold of my ankles, and that coach pulled off his belt, which is about 2 inches wide, and he went to laying it on me across my back, my bare back, and he beat the crap out of me with it. Well, when he let me up, he said, "Now you'll get that every day that you don't show up for football." Well, I went down to the pool hall, which my dad owned, and showed him my back, and he got up and put on, I can remember it like it was yesterday, he put on this leather saddle slicker and his big hat, and he always wore a pistol. He was a Texas Rangers reserve officer. They don't draw any pay or anything, but they're there that they can be called on if need be. And he was a sergeant in World War I, which I think that they based that on. But at any rate, he says, "Come go with me." And we got up to the school, and he says, "Stay here in the pickup." And he started walking up the walk toward the door, and the coach came out carrying a baseball bat. And about halfway between where we were parked and the door of the school is where they met, and my dad stopped him about 10 feet away, and when he pulled his pistol out and pointed at it right between his eyes, and the coach dropped the bat and turned around and ran and went in the door, and you could see the principal and superintendent and the coach inside the door, and they had it locked. My dad went up there and talked to him through the door, and when he came back, he picked up the bat and brought it back with him. And anyway, the story goes that the coach called the sheriff in Borger and said Mills Foreman threatened to kill me, and the superintendent and principal, all three of us, if we were there the next morning. And sheriff said, "What did he say?" And he said, "Well, after what I did to his son, if they saw the sun come up, they wouldn't see it set there." And the sheriff said, "Well, if I was you, I'd be home packing." And sure enough, the next day, we had no men in the school at all. It was all women, and they had a meeting, and they said that the superintendent and principal and coach had all resigned and left. They didn't speak much on it. And it was a couple of weeks before they finally got another superintendent and principal, but never did get a coach. So there was no football that year, and I don't know if they had it any the next year or not. But that's my sports career story. So God bless America, God bless Texas, and you folks have a great day.